Dominic, I want to really, really warmly welcome you to the Payments as a Lifeline table. We've been talking for a long time, and we're super, super excited to have you and your team at the table. So we're going to try to keep this brief, keep the enthusiasm contained, and we'll record it and share with others. So one of the reasons that Payment as a Lifeline is so excited about BGenerous coming is you're doing what we've never seen before, which is specifically lending to nonprofits to fuel their ability to deliver on their mission with the type of professional lending that fuels tens of millions of for-profits every day for success and growth. And in my past life, I was a loan officer for different large lenders. None would touch nonprofits. SBA doesn't lend to nonprofits.
Right.
So there's just not a lot of options out there for nonprofits seeking loan funding versus having to wait for grants. So tell us about your background and how you've landed as co-founder of BGenerous.
Yeah, well, first of all, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here with the PaaL network, and we're very excited to be working with you and to be helping as many nonprofits as we are today. So my background, briefly, is I was actually born in Asia. I was born in China, and then I grew up in London, England. Lived in Europe, and so before the age of 10, I lived on 3 continents. And having that background gave me a really cosmopolitan view of the world. I got to see incredible poverty in some parts of East Asia, and then I got to see incredible opulence living in central London, and eventually made my way out to the United States when I was a kid. And so it gave me a global perspective, and I always knew I wanted to do something in impact. So of course, naturally, I started my career in banking. That's a joke. So I started my career in banking, though. I was at Citi and then HSBC while I was attending college, and then eventually realized that I was more interested in the impact side of things. So I actually got asked to be a political advisor to the Afghanistan ambassador. I went into international diplomacy, then asked ultimately to be an advisor to the chairman of the Senate Finance Committee in Washington, D.C., which was very cool, working on Capitol Hill. And eventually I realized I could combine the dynamism, the talent, and the resources that I had experienced when I was in the private sector with the nominal goal of the public sector, which is ostensibly to improve people's lives. I could somehow combine those. They must intersect at some point and sort of have a career at the intersection of profit and purpose. And so I ultimately found my way into that world and became an impact entrepreneur. And so today I'm currently running my 3rd company that works in impact. The commonality between the 3 companies that I've started and run are that they've all been backed by venture capital and or private equity money. And they all build products to create efficiencies for the largest underserved sector of finance in the world, which is the US nonprofit sector. So the company that I run today, that I'm CEO of, is a company called BGenerous. That's what you see here. And we are the nation's leading credit provider to nonprofits. And so I'm sure you'll ask me, some other questions about that later. But in essence, the U.S. nonprofit sector is massive, absolutely massive. Nonprofits in the United States employ 10% of the American workforce, hold $8 trillion worth of assets, generate $3.7 trillion a year in income, and contribute 15% to U.S. GDP. So 1 out of every $6 in the United States actually comes from the nonprofit sector. And in fact, it's so big, the nonprofit sector, that if U.S. nonprofits were their own economy, they would be the 5th largest economy in the world. Bigger than Russia, bigger than Brazil, bigger than the United Kingdom, bigger than France, bigger than the GDPs of these countries, just American nonprofits. And yet, despite everything I just told you, 97% approximately of nonprofits are unable to access traditional credit from banks. So only about 3% of nonprofits can borrow, and those nonprofits do borrow a lot, but the bottom 97% of the market that raise under $5 million a year are totally priced out of the credit markets, as you alluded to earlier from your career in banking. So that's the problem that we're solving.
I love it. And it's impact in banking. So my background is also banking, more fintech and payments. And my dad says, honey, I don't know what fintech is. How do I say what you do? And I said, just a banker with a heart. And it sounds like we share the banker with a heart piece. And the nonprofit, last figure I saw was 1.8 million nonprofits in the US. And so many of them have come to Payments as a Lifeline saying, do you know who can lend us money? And even some of the really big ones that everybody would have heard of need this. So we're going to get to some of that in a minute. But do you have a story you could share about a nonprofit you've helped that you think is a good story for this audience?
Yeah. So we've lent quite a bit of capital since we launched last year, and to give you a context of those numbers, we have in the last 12 months received over 11,000 nonprofit loan requests, requesting about $800 million to be borrowed on the BGenerous platform. Now, of course, it's a credit product, so not all of that is lendable, but we have been able to get out millions of dollars in the form of loans to nonprofits. But one really does come to mind, and that's an incredible organization called the Anthony Bates Foundation, run by an equally amazing woman called Sharon Bates. So Sharon Bates was, a typical American mother, loved her children, had a wonderful son named Anthony, and he unfortunately passed away very young from an undiagnosed heart condition in his 20s that nobody knew he had. He was an athlete, he was a football player, and he passed away. And Sharon used that grief to start what is now called the Anthony Bates Foundation, which screens children across the United States for this very lethal undiagnosed heart condition, which, if not found, could ultimately result in death. And they came to us and they said, listen, we want to put on more heart screenings across the country. We want to save lives. We don't want to put all this on high interest credit cards. We can't get a loan elsewhere, right? Because of all the structural issues with nonprofit banks, as we just talked about, nonprofits and banking. So we were able to structure a term loan for them through our lending marketplace. And not only did they take that loan and then put on an incredible series of heart screenings, but they paid it back very quickly and then came back for a second loan and actually did it twice. And I got a call from Sharon, quite emotional, saying that at one of the screenings they did, they actually found 4 children that had this heart condition, and that we were in part part of the story of saving lives, because who knows what would have happened if we hadn't caught those hadn't caught the heart condition. So you're talking about real impact, real people, real stories on the ground actually saving lives, and if we can play a small part in that, that's incredible, right? Who doesn't want to be able to help children for a living and be able to have a career doing that? So we played our small part in doing that, and it's always, I always get emotional thinking about it, because I don't think it necessarily would have happened if we didn't put up the capital to help them do that.
Wow, that is cool. We could do a whole call just on a series of stories, but in the interest of time, um, so PAL focuses on fintech and banking, insurance, and disaster and aid, working with nonprofits of all different sizes. And one of the biggest needs is what, as lenders, we would call a bridge loan.
Mhm.
So it's the nonprofits win a grant, they win a contract, and they have to deliver services or goods in advance of being paid enough to cover these expenses. So many of them aren't taking these grants that they've won because they don't have the capital timing wise.
Yeah.
And it's even some of the biggest. I mean, some of the household names have the same challenge. And as disasters get bigger and bigger and the need is more, this is getting worse. So
Yeah.
how could BGenerous help address this kind of bridge loan topic?
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right, right? The world is becoming more chaotic. Climate change is getting worse. Storms are getting more aggressive, and they're happening more on average. I mean, right now I'm supposed to head to Florida in a few days. We're the end of hurricane season. There's supposed to be another hurricane coming through. So this is going to continue to progressively get worse. And the need for nonprofit social services is up more than ever. It's actually up 70% year over year. So at a time when donations are actually decreasing across the United States, COVID did a number on a lot of nonprofits. About half of all nonprofits in America have less than 6 months of cash on hand. So a lot more nonprofits are relying on government or foundation grants. And as you said correctly, a lot of those get delayed, or sometimes they're even reimbursable grants where the nonprofit has to expend the capital first. And then when those get delayed in payout, it's really painful, right? Because the nonprofit might be out $1 million. They expected to get paid XYZ money on XYZ date, and now they're told it's 6 months delayed, it's 9 months delayed. We don't know when it's coming. And we've actually seen that up close and personal with the borrowers that we've helped. So one of the things that we've been able to do is provide bridge financing to help bridge those gaps for reimbursable loans that have been delayed, or just for general loans that are general grants that have not been paid out on the date that they're supposed to, thus pushing back the whole project that the nonprofit needs to do. So as opposed to a nonprofit either not accepting the grant, getting paid late, and having to go through a huge amount of pain because of liquidity challenges, and or not pushing back the date of their project, we can come in and provide that interim financing for them, and then when the funds arrive from the government, you get paid back. And all the loans that we provide are, fairly concessionary, right? So if you look at like the SBA, which, as you said, doesn't lend to nonprofits, rates on small business lending for SBA can be, upwards of 15, 16%. Obviously, credit cards, they're even higher, 20, 25%, 30%. Ours are much lower than that. So we try to price these things appropriate to the risk, but also understanding that we want to meet the unique cash needs of the nonprofits. We're not in the business of gouging and taking advantage. That's explicitly what we're not doing. And I've spent my whole professional career selling products into the nonprofit space. I sit on the board of multiple nonprofits. I'm very passionate about helping nonprofits. So we're doing things ethically the right way.
I love it. Well, so we talked about bridge loans. Another thing that we're actively talking about right now is a PaaL friend who wants to buy real estate, and so it's secured by real estate. One piece is a complete, another one is a development project, but they've got all the water and electric and the buildings donated to go on it. So not only bridge loans, but also secured loans. Real estate kind of loans. So I'm sure rates vary depending on what the security is. But
Yeah.
anything to add?
Yeah, rates do vary, of course. They range from, anywhere from prime to 1 to prime to 4, sort of in that general range. And we do a lot of lending for real estate projects. I mean, right now we have a $10 million loan in underwriting for a university. We have another $4 million loan in underwriting for a children's museum. We lend nationally across the United States. One of these is in the West Coast. One of these is on the East Coast of the two I just mentioned. Our loans range from on the sort of the low end, around $50,000, all the way up to now $50 million. Used to be that we were capped at 10 million, but as we've expanded our lending network for more balance sheet lenders, and we've been able to accumulate more capital on our end to lend out, we can go up higher now. So now we can actually go to 50 million for even bigger organizations. We don't do prepayment penalties. We don't do personal guarantees, by the way. We don't ask for personal guarantees. We don't levy prepayment penalties. I mean, we understand the pain of nonprofits. And so it would make no sense if we said we need a personal guarantee, because another bank would just do that. We're specifically lending to nonprofits against basically future cash flow and revenue, or in some cases, as you mentioned, fixed assets like collateral, or even like an endowment. You could even use that as a form of collateral. So we're very creative in how we operate.
I love it. So as we close out, what's the one big takeaway you want this audience to retain from this chat?
I would say if you're a nonprofit and you're doing great work in the community and trying to help those around you, and you're looking for liquidity, you're looking for cash advance, you're looking for a leg up, you're looking for that extra bump that may propel you to achieving your mission or your goal, or maybe you just need working capital, or a donor fell out, or a pledge didn't come through, or you just missed your fundraising mark. Give us a ring. Go to our website, BGenerous.com. You can email me directly if you'd like. We have a great team. We're out there. We're really the premier name in nonprofit lending today. We come from the nonprofit space. We're the ethical lenders in the space. And this is all we do, by the way. We don't lend to small businesses. We don't lend to consumers. Other people may do all three. We focus only on nonprofit loans through structured impact term loans and lines of credit. And, we're going to lend probably over $100 million next year. So if your organization's in need, please reach out.
Excellent. And BGenerous will also have a link on the Payments as a Lifeline website, paalpay.org. Thank you, Dominic. It is fun to talk to somebody that shares this impact banker with a heart passion. So thank you for taking the time.
Thanks so much for having me. I love the opportunity. It's great to be here, and I appreciate you having this call with us.